では、ジェフ・パットンさん、12年ぶりぐらいの、初回からの2回目のキーノートということになります。なんだか日本にはいらっしゃってますが、長年の私の、古い友人というかずっとアジャイルカンファレンスで毎回お会いして毎回満席のセッションをアジャイルカンファレンスでやられているジェフ・パットンさん日本に来ていただいてで皆さんに、非常に多くの皆さんに、見ていただけると私も大変喜ばしく思っております。ではジェフ・パットンさんよろしくお願いします。じゃあ Let's start the keynote speech from Jeff Patton. Thank you.
All right, I'll see if I can make sure the microphone catches me. I move around a lot. I am Jeff Patton. I will try and speak slowly enough that translators can keep up. And that play was a perfect introduction to what I need to talk about. I need a picture of the bird that will kill you if you don't focus on value, because that's important. I want to talk about value. You are all here because you probably help build software, help build products. But do you know how valuable they are? For the last feature you released or put into your product, do you know how valuable it is? And how would you know? We keep talking about value, but I want you to be very clear on where value comes from. That's the obligatory slide about me. I am here because I'm very old. I've been building software, well, since the 1980s, but it was my job starting in 1993. But I've been focusing on building software from a product perspective. I started with the process extreme programming in the year 2000. In 2001, the term Agile was coined, and I found out I was using an Agile process. And my job title in 2000 and 2001 was Product Manager. So I come into Agile development thinking about it from a product perspective. And of course, you all know that I'm responsible for that story mapping thing. It's the only book I've written. And it took me so long to write, and I need to write more books, but that's going to take a while. Oh, this would be, yeah, this would be better. I don't know why I didn't see that earlier. Is that better? Now I won't have to lean over, and we can move that out. All right. Scrum uses the term product owner to describe this emphasis on product, but I find that most organizations don't really understand what we mean by that. All modern companies use digital technology to drive their business success. You're here because they do, but not all product companies leverage product thinking to really get the benefit out of it. Now, I'll mention a couple companies that I've had the pleasure of working with. In the United States, there is a large department store chain called Target. Target, their sales in 2023 was over 107 billion US dollars. They have thousands of stores, and they are an example of a company that has adopted product thinking in the way that they build their digital technology. Another large US retailer is a company called CarMax. They sell cars. They're the world's largest used car dealership. Their sales, well, from when I started working with them, their sales were around $10 billion a year. And as of last year, their sales are well over $25 billion annually. And of course, there's a lot of factors that lead to their growth, but they cite adopting product thinking to one of the important things. Now, what product thinking does is compel everyone to move their focus to value, and that's why this is important. So one thing I want you to notice is what these companies have in common. What they have in common is they are not software companies. They do not produce and sell software. They sell cars, they sell groceries, they sell lots of other things, but their products are, their primary product is that retail experience. So I need to focus on three things. I'd like to finish in an hour and leave time for a lot of questions, but I want to explain where value really comes from. Anyone who's ever taken a class from me or seen me deliver a talk will have seen me draw this model over and over, and I won't stop drawing it until it is common understanding. So I'll start with that. Now, I want to help you identify what your products are. Because if you're a company like Target or CarMax, your digital products are something very different. You can't be a product owner, you can't own product value unless you understand what your products are. So we want to talk about that. And then I really want to get serious about explaining exactly how you measure value. No one should leave here thinking that value is subjective, or it's a guess, or something that stakeholders tell you is valuable. You should be able to say specifically how your product is valuable. So let's start by talking about where value comes from. And I want to start with a couple examples of very successful companies. And I'll give you an example of a very successful company that forgot where value comes from. This is Jeff Bezos. He is holding above his head something called an Amazon Fire Phone. Has anyone heard of the Fire Phone before? A few people. In 2014, Amazon launched the Fire Phone as a competitor to Android-based phones and to iPhones, and it had its own ecosystem and some really interesting features in it, and he announced it after many years of R&D. He's announcing it Steve Jobs style. The only problem with this phone is no one liked it. Reviewers hated it, customers hated it, no one bought it. It sold originally for $200 US. Soon after releasing it, they marked it down to 99 cents US. You could buy it for $1 if so long as you bought some mobile phone time. And then by the end of the year, they took it off the market. In 2014, they wrote off $170 million worth of unsold phones. Now, the tragedy here isn't that this was an unsuccessful product. The big tragedy here is that the people building the product knew it. There are many articles written to describe, to talk about what went wrong. I'm going to give you a quote from an article from Fast Company magazine. "We poured surreal amounts of money into it, yet we all thought it had no value to the customer," which was the biggest irony. Whenever anyone asked why we're doing this, the answer was, because Jeff wants it. Not me, that other Jeff. No one thought the feature justified the cost of the project. No one, absolutely no one. Now, this is what happens when teams mistake stakeholder satisfaction for value. This is what happens when teams think that their customer is Jeff Bezos. But Jeff Bezos isn't happy when he gets what he wants. Jeff Bezos is happy when you get what you want. Jeff Bezos does not have enough thumbs to use $170 million worth of Fire Phones. The customer to focus on was you, not Jeff Bezos. That's the tragedy here. And the tragedy is the teams working on this that shipped this product on time and probably at very high quality weren't focusing on value. Now, here's an alternative. This person is Daniel Ek. He's the CEO of Spotify. I'm very lucky. I met this person a long time ago, and I worked for Spotify. I taught the very first product ownership in Spotify when it was a very small Stockholm company, less than 200 people. I was asked to come over to Spotify, and I didn't know who they were. I thought, why are they so important? Why is this an interesting company? But I was able to talk to them very early on and able to get a feel for the company, and I know that they're focused on value. I didn't give this person enough reverence when I first met him, but now he's gone on to build a hugely successful company. If you use Spotify, you're aware of a feature in Spotify called Discovery Weekly. Now, when I first worked with Spotify, there was no easy way to discover and find new, interesting music, but Discovery Weekly was a wildly successful feature that helped you find new music. Now, when asked specifically about that feature, this is a quote from also Fast Company magazine, same magazine, different article, Daniel said, "I would have killed that if it was just me, 100%. I never really saw the beauty of it. I questioned them, the team building it, 2 or 3 times. Why are you sure you really want to do this? Why are you spending all this time and energy? There are lots of things in this company I didn't think were good ideas that turned into some of our best things." Now, this is what leadership behaves like when they understand what value is and when they understand that the value isn't doing what they want. This is what leadership behaves like when they hold teams responsible for value, and this is what teams behave like when they know they're responsible for value. So let's talk about this value word a bit more. Now I need to ask you to think about what makes a product valuable to you. This is normally where I ask people to shout things out, but I don't know how many people speak English here. Can you think of a product that you love? What makes a product valuable to you? I can guess. Did I hear somebody yelling? All right, let me fill in a few things. I've asked this question many times. When I ask people what makes a product valuable to them, they will say things like it is easy to use, or it solves a problem. Even things like it's fun to use, or it saves me time, or I use it every day. Even things like it's delightful. It solves a problem I didn't even know I had. Now, look, the next question I'll ask is, if this is what's valuable to you as someone who uses a product, think about your company. If your company makes products, what makes a product valuable to your organization? If your organization makes a bunch of products, when I ask people this, the first thing I hear is that it makes money. Or if we build that product for internal use, they will say things like it saves money. And all that leads to return on investment. They'll say things like it's easy to sell, or customers love it. Jim talked about lovability with products yesterday as being really important. Those are the things that make things valuable to your organization. Now, the one thing no one says is finished on time, or finished under budget, or stakeholders love it, because that's not where value comes from. When everyone here in this room and in the room next door and people watching online, I assume it is your job to take ideas and turn them into products, into things that people can use. Now, those ideas could be for whole new products, but you are probably here because you build software as a product. Software is a very different kind of product. It is not like a car or a camera or a computer. If your car may be a product, but if we'll have someone here from Honda speaking tomorrow, someone very important who has been involved with this way of thinking for a very long time. But if you have a Honda car or motorcycle, if the company is hard at work developing a better car or motorcycle, you will have to get rid of your old one and replace it with a new one. Traditional products improve themselves using an obsolescence model. They design a new product, you get rid of your old one and replace it with a new one. But we're broadcasting this conference on Zoom. There is no new Zoom. You don't get rid of your old Zoom and replace it with new Zoom. You don't get rid of old Microsoft Office 365 and replace it with new Microsoft Office. You don't get rid of old Google Docs and replace it with new. Rather, software products improve themselves not by making an old version obsolete, but by adding additional features and capabilities. Now, that's what we end up doing an awful lot, is adding features and capabilities to products. Those are the things that we end up eventually referring to as our requirements. Those are the things that your product owner will stack up and put into a product backlog and try and prioritize. If you work for an organization, we worry about how much time it's going to take these products, features, or capabilities and turn them into working software. We worry about the cost. Cost in software isn't measured in metal or plastic. It's measured in people, your time, team time. And we know all this stuff is called scope. And if you're familiar with software development, you're aware of this time, cost, and scope triangle. If you use a process like Scrum, you're very aware of it. Scrum fixes this time in a sprint, maybe 2 weeks. They fix the cost by fixing the size of the team, and at the beginning of every sprint, the team fixes the scope by saying what they can complete inside the sprint. That's the way Scrum works. It focuses on time, cost, and scope. Now, you know this triangle is the bad news triangle. There's no good news here. You know that conventional wisdom says you can only have 2 of these things, meaning if you fix time and cost, the bad news is you get less scope. You fix time and scope, the bad news is the cost will go up. And if you insist on fixing all 3, time, cost, and scope, the bad news is there's actually 4 points in the triangle, and the 4th point is quality. You fix time, cost, and scope, and quality squeezes out. Now, we spend a lot of time focusing on these things, but that's not where value comes from. This isn't value. Value is not up to you. Value is up to your customers and users. And I'll explain the difference. What is important is what they do and how they feel and what they say. When we release a new product or feature capability, what we hope is that they see it and they choose to try it. We hope that they actually use it for its intended use. We hope that they keep using it. And we hope that they say good things about it. And these are the kinds of good things we hope that they say. This is what matters. If we release a new product or feature or capability and people see it and don't want to try it, or they try it and can't figure out how to use it, or they use it one time and never use it again, that's a failure. It doesn't matter if it was finished on time or under budget. It doesn't even matter if the quality of the code is good, or if, like Jim pointed out yesterday, that there are many successful companies that are a mess from an engineering perspective because that's not what matters. It doesn't matter if the product is well engineered. This is what matters. This is where value comes from. Now, there are kinds of products we can force people to use. Does anyone here use Jira in their company? A few. Jira has dominant market share for things there. Now, I can ask you, if you decided you hate Jira, you may have already decided you hate Jira. But if you decide you hate Jira, can you go into work on Monday and say, I'm done. I will never use Jira again? Can anybody say, I'll never use Jira? This makes you a user, but not a chooser or a customer. This is a characteristic of business-to-business software, or software we build for our own employees. So we can force people to try it and use it and keep using it, but we cannot force them to say good things. But the doing that matters when we build software for our own use or for business-to-business software are things like, well, we measure with things like efficiency and effectiveness, where efficiency means we get more work done faster, and effectiveness means we make fewer mistakes. We have fewer problems with it. We do better work. That's the doing that matters. If we release software for internal use and people must use it, but they do work slowly, more slowly, that's not valuable. If they make more mistakes, that's not valuable. Now, what's interesting is if you release a piece of software and one person sees it, tries it, uses it, and really loves it, that's just interesting. We need lots of people to see it and use it and make a difference. If lots of people see it and use it, and somewhere along the line they have to pay for it. Maybe they pay for it by buying licenses. Maybe they pay for it, like in Facebook, by viewing ads or other things. If lots of people see that, that's when inside our organization we start to see revenue. So let me put your organization out here on the edge. Your organization has a very different responsibility than your customers and users. It needs to sustain itself. And it does not sustain itself with happy people. It sustains itself with money. And we need lots of people to use a product and buy it and help earn revenue. When we build something for internal use, we need lots of our employees to use it to save costs. And all of that results in ROI. We need lots of people to say good things about our product because that helps our brand or our reputation. And that makes us attractive in the market, and it makes it easier for us to sell our products. And when we can sell more of our products, this helps our position in the market or our market share. We sell more than our competitors do, and we dominate the market. These are the things that matter to your organization. This is where value comes from for your organization. Now, one of the things I want you to notice is that value for customers and value for your organization are very different things. Your customers don't care if you make money. Your customers aren't worried about your reputation. Your customers are worried about their own problems and their own needs. So when we talk about value, there's two very different types of value. And these values are often at odds with each other. Making companies sometimes figure out how to make money by hurting customers, having them sign up for services they don't want or need, or charging them more money than they want to pay. That's business value, it's just not user value. Now let's work backwards here. Most processes, even processes like Scrum, start with a backlog of ideas, but if you're a product thinker, it starts upstream. It starts by paying attention to customers and users. It starts by paying attention to their problems and their, let's call it, needs. Not every product solves a problem. I'm staying close by in Akihabara, and there are lots of stores that are all about games, and if you build games, games don't solve problems. Social media doesn't solve problems. Streaming video services like Netflix or YouTube don't solve problems. Arguably, they create problems. But we are all wired with the need to be entertained, to have fun, to socialize with other people, to feel popular, to feel happy. And look, let's go all the way back to your company. Remember, your organization needs to make money. And hopefully your organization has some sort of mission, something that it is trying to do to help or change the world. Hopefully it has some vision for where it wants to be many years from now, some strategy for how it's going to get there. And the people responsible for that vision, mission, and strategy, we often call them the business or business stakeholders. It's their job to make sure that your organization is making money or sustaining itself. It's their job to understand their mission, vision, and strategy. And it isn't just enough for a company to make money. Most organizations obligate themselves to grow. If your company publishes quarter-over-quarter financial projections, it usually does not show your company is staying the same size every quarter or shrinking every quarter. It shows it's growing. And if your organization is not growing, its strategy is not working, it's not moving towards its vision, this results in a business problem. Now, a business problem is not a user problem. Your users are not laying awake at night worrying about your growth targets. That's not their problem, it's yours. So again, if software should solve a problem, we've got to understand whose problem it solves. Our business will worry about their problems, But here's the annoying thing is businesses cannot directly solve their problems. If your business wants to save money, it's going to need to find employees inside the organization that are working inefficiently or have problems to solve. If your organization wants to make more money, it's going to need to find customers or users that have needs that your company doesn't fulfill, and then come up with ideas to fulfill them. This is the way a product model works. Now, I draw this model over and over, but these days I color code it because every organization worries about the things in blue. They worry about whether they're making money, they worry about how long it takes to build things, and they worry about, well, if they've made money on the things that they built. But what makes any of this possible are the parts in green. They can't just come up with ideas without understanding the problems they solve and for who. And to measure the value, we need to pay attention to those customers and users and what they do with the product. Because if they're not successful, we're not successful. That's the way this works. Now, it's everything between here and here. That's what we call output. That's what we build. That's what we target for every sprint. That's what we evaluate at the end of every sprint review. But what matters most is what happens when things come out. The term for that is outcome. And outcome is not measured in what we built or the quality of what we built or whether stakeholders love it. Outcome is measured based on what people do with it when things come out. And it can't be measured at the end of the sprint because it often takes days, weeks, or months for people to see, try, use, and keep using that product. It isn't even part of Scrum most of the time. But if Scrum is about value, we need to start paying attention to it. Now, some people use the word outcome for everything out here, but for me there's a very big difference between what your customers and users do and the benefit your company gets. I'm using the term impact for this. It is outcome that drives business impact. In my taxonomy, I don't think there's any such thing as a business outcome. It starts with a user outcome that leads to a business impact. This language system of output, outcome, and impact, I did not invent it. It's very old, has been used this way for a very long time. I'm just reinforcing it here. I'm going to refer to these things as business problems, or we could also refer to them as business needs, and we refer to these customers' problems or needs as opportunities. If we are a product organization, we understand our business and its needs, and we know that our business can't directly solve its problems, so we look for customer opportunities or needs. We use those to come up with ideas. We build those ideas. And yes, if you don't build anything, if there's no output, there won't be any outcome, but we know that we focus on value. And value is measured based upon whether people use what we built, and later, months or even years, quarters or years later, we measure the business impact, the return on investment. It takes a very long time to measure that stuff. Our leading indicators of success are outcomes. Now, if we're focusing on value, we know that it all comes from here. I want to see if there's any other points I want to make before we move on here. Let me see if I can summarize what's going on here. I want you all to sharpen your language here. That business problems or business needs, those are the things that we focus on. Opportunities are our customers and users' problems. Customers may be people inside our building or people outside of our building. Output, those are the features and capabilities we build. Outcome, that's what happens when things come out. We measure outcome based upon how much our product is used. And impact, that's the benefit that comes as a consequence of people using our product. Now, if you were worried about project management, let me grab something. The scope of project management, that's right here. You can be successful if you deliver what you were asked to deliver on time and under budget. But the scope of product thinking, that is end to end. This is where products live. And products are focused on value. So you need to all ask yourselves, do I provide value to my company by building software? Or is the software I build valuable to my company? If you think your only job is to build software, then you're in a very different business. But if you are focused on the value your software creates, then you have to focus on this whole model. All right, let's summarize this and let's move on. Look, building more faster is not the goal. I don't know how fast the features and capabilities of that Fire Phone were delivered, but it did not matter. Your business succeeds by finding and solving customer and user problems, and successful outcomes, what your customers endure, that's what drives business impact. In a digital product model, and this is why they're so great, is it shifts the focus to the same thing. Business people know their business success matters, but they know that the leading indicator to their business being successful is outcomes. And software teams now move their focus to outcomes, and now for once we are all focused on the same thing. We all understand where value comes from. It's those product outcomes. Again, because that's what drives business impact. Now, you may work for a company where your success is measured based upon whether you're meeting delivery targets, whether you're delivering what you said you would on time, or whether the roadmap is being delivered or fulfilled. It's a very old quote. It's difficult to get a person to understand something when their salary depends on their not understanding it. Now that you understand where value comes from, you may find you're in an organization that really doesn't care much about value. They just care about delivering things on time. And sometimes speaking out can be a career-limiting move. So look, let me draw one quick picture here. If you work in an organization that doesn't focus on value, I want you to think of this continuum here. On the left side of the continuum, I am going to write the word waiter. And on the right side of the continuum, I am going to write the word doctor. Now, both of these kinds of people help other people. They do service work. And you know how it works to be a waiter. We were at a restaurant last night and we ordered lots of food, and we think the waiter is good when they give us what we want and give it to us quickly, and they suggest things and help us make choices. And when we order more food and when we leave the restaurant happy, that's a good waiter, and we're happy. But try that with your doctor. Go to your doctor and tell your doctor, look, these are the prescriptions I'd like you to write, and this is the surgery I'd like you to perform. Your doctor will say, that's nice, tell me where it hurts. Doctors are obligated to focus on this model. Doctors must understand your problems or needs, and doctors measure success based upon medical outcomes. The doctor with the best outcomes is not the one that wrote the most prescriptions the fastest. In the United States, doctors make more money when they see more patients and perform more services. So they make a lot more money, but they still know that they are evaluated based upon outcomes. They do this because they swear a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. And in the United States, they will get sued for medical malpractice if they don't focus on this. Now, there is no software development Hippocratic oath, and there is no software development malpractice. So you have to lean on your own values. And for me, it's important to focus on value. So when you are working with stakeholders, with customers, with users, try to think more like a doctor. Try to back up and really understand the problem you're solving, and don't just prescribe features or fill the prescriptions your customers are asking for. Actually measure whether they're working. Now, let's go on here. Let's talk about, you understand how products work now, but it's important we understand what our products are. So what is a product? I remember going to a conference just during the summer, the Agile conference in the United States, and I attended a talk where somebody spent a lot of time explaining a product, which I thought was dumb. The short answer to what a product is anything. It doesn't matter. We can look at anything through a product lens. Let's suppose you work in human resources at your company. It's easy. All I have to do is say, who are my customers and users for human resources? Well, the people that I work with are the employees of my company and my leadership. The leadership are my customers, and employees are my users. And I do things like support the hiring process, and I support handling communications and the rollout of new policies, and I may support employees and managers during a dispute or help employees as they exit my company. And I could evaluate myself based upon how many documents I write and how good those documents are. But if I consider myself a product, then I will evaluate the employees and how often they use this products and services how often they use those documents I write, if they get value from those documents, if it helps them, if employee satisfaction is good. It doesn't matter how much work I do. What matters is employees taking advantage of that work and using that work. I can treat anything as a product. So that's the first rule of thumb. You need to start to understand what you do from a product perspective. And again, that's where, is your product building software for your company, or is the software you build the product? So we want to look at the software we build as a product. Now, during the year last year, I was working with this company. This company is Volvo. They make trucks. Volvo makes trucks and earth-moving equipment. And one of the things that Volvo understands, and you need to understand, is that products like trucks are filled with lots of smaller products. If you disassemble a truck, you're going to find it has braking systems and engine components and things like that. And Volvo, as a truck company, recognizes that every one of those products inside the truck is also a product. And those products often get used across many different trucks. But the reason Volvo and I were talking with each other is because they forget that when they talk about software. They end up rebuilding the same software over and over again. They wouldn't rebuild the same braking system or same engine over and over again, but they do that with software. And they forget what the software products are inside. So if you build software, you need to understand what your digital products are. Now, I'm prepared to talk about this. Look, if we understand that anything is a product, if we can identify our product, what we need to do is think outside in, or what's outside the product, that's what matters. Now, the first layer of things we need to understand outside the product are our customers and our users. Now, I want to re-explain the difference. The other word for customers is often choosers. These are the people that decide they want to buy or use a product. One of the things they focus on is the value proposition. How will using it bring me value? Your company had to decide whether having Jira inside the company would make its employees more efficient or more effective. If I want to use Spotify, I will look at my value proposition. I get value from Spotify by listening to music, and I still don't listen to podcasts on Spotify. I don't think it does as good a job with that. But in order to get value from Spotify, I must use it. To use Spotify, that means I have to do things like signing up and signing in and looking for music and creating playlists. Those are all the usages that bring me value. So to understand a product, we need to understand its users and its choosers. What value proposition are we delivering, and how do we need to use it in order to get that value proposition? So if you're responsible for a product, that's what you're going to need to understand. Now, every organization has end customers. And customers and users. And they stand outside your company, and they purchase your company's end products. Now, an easy example for me to use is a bank. Everybody here probably has a bank account of some type. And the reason you go to your bank is, well, to get that bank account. You may have what's called a checking account, although no one writes checks anymore. You may have something like a credit card. You may have something like a loan for your car or for your home or something like that. Those are the bank's end products. And the bank knows that. Inside the bank, there will be product managers and teams that are focused on those end products. But they're not digital products, but they take lots of digital technology to make those products work. So if we want to figure out what our digital products are, we take our digital wrench and screwdriver and we start taking apart the end customer experience with the product. When we do that, we will find products like end customer enabling products. For a bank, end customer enabling products are things like their website or the bank's mobile app. Now, we recognize this as a product. This may be obvious, but banks freak out when I tell them this. They will tell me, that's not a product, that's a channel, or they'll use special language to talk about it. These are products and these are channels. And I say, well, it doesn't matter. A channel is a kind of a product, and you need to operate these like a product. And you also need to understand it as an enabling product, because that website and mobile app are used across all of your other products. We use the same website to support all of our checking accounts, credit cards, and loans. It's a common website that's used for all of these. Just like in Volvo, a braking system may be common across many different products. Now, we recognize as the product and organize teams around those things. And the first thing those teams need to understand, and let me draw these as some layers here. We often refer to this as the onion model because I'm going to peel this onion back. But the one thing you need to understand is that your customers and users, well, they come from above. So if you build a website and mobile app, you know that you've got these end customers and users that will use your website and mobile app, but you also know that people that get value out of the product are the people we often call stakeholders inside the organization. If they have a new credit card product, they can't get their product to market without your website and mobile app. You've got to worry about the value proposition of the people inside the building and the people outside the building. This makes your life really hard. You've got to be aware of all these customers. If we keep unpacking this experience, one of the things that we're going to find are employee enabling apps. Employee enabling apps for a bank, banks often have physical branches. So we'll talk about the apps that people work within the branches or locations. Banks often have call centers, so we'll have call center apps. We recognize those as products. We organize teams around those products. And we know that the users of those products are employees. Employees that work at bank branches, employees that work at call centers. But we know that they're users, they're not choosers. They don't get to decide whether they use the product or not. The choosers are often their bosses or their what we call business stakeholders again, but these business stakeholders are responsible for operations. They lead call centers, they lead branches. We know that these people, employees, they work with these end users, but we know that if we build a call center app, our users that matter, the people that, when we build new features and functionality, we focus on whether people in branches or call centers actually use those and whether they're more efficient and more effective. That's what matters to us. That's the value we're paying attention to. Now, let's go one level deeper here. If you work for a bank and you build a website or a mobile app or a branch app or a call center app, you will need the right software that allows you to look at customers and all of their accounts and make payments and show balances, things like that. In fact, every single one of these teams needs the same thing. When you have a lot of people that need the same thing, that creates a market for a product. And what we do is create another common kind of product. We're going to call this kind of product team enabling. Now, for this kind of product, its customers are these other product teams. And this type of product often takes the form of an API or a service, or sometimes we'll call this a platform or components. But it's a product and it has many customers. The customers and our product teams, the users are engineers on those product teams, And what we pay attention to is whether they use the APIs and services and whether they're more efficient and more effective, whether they can build and support applications better and faster. That's the value they focus on. And we recognize these as products also and manage them like a product. We worry about the customer satisfaction for these internal customers. Let's add one more thing here. These kinds of product team enabling things have a habit of kind of bubbling out to the outside edge. We call these things, when they bubble out to the outside edge, partner enabling. Partner enabling products often still take the form of an API or a service, but the customers for these partner enabling things are partners that will use those APIs and services to construct their own applications. I know that my accounting software can connect directly to my bank, and my accounting software knows my balances. It's because they use my bank's partner enabling services to do that. So look, if you're, the first thing I'll ask organizations to do is to build a product taxonomy. Tell me what your products are, and then organize teams around those. Now, Jim yesterday talked about a book for figuring out what your product teams are. That's, wow, what was it? Team Topologies. It's a great book, but it talks about value stream teams, and it's just confusing to me because my head thinks in products. In the fine print of Team Topologies, they will say a value stream team is what often people call a product team. You need to understand your product topology, and you need to organize teams around those. So recognize what your products are, organize teams around those, and what's interesting is I don't care how durable your teams are, I care how durable your understanding of products are. Teams may move from product to product or from product team to product team, but there will always be a mobile app team. There will always be a website team. There's more here to talk about because sometimes it takes many teams to create a website or a mobile app, and there's teams of teams. I like Jim's solution yesterday of scaling vertically, letting teams get a little bit bigger than Scrum usually likes them. Now we call this an onion model because we're peeling it back, and we look above to figure out where our customers come from, but we also call this an onion model because the closer you get to the center, the more it stinks and the more it makes you cry. The closer you are to the center, the more customers and users you have to worry about, and the harder it is to preserve their interests, the more pieces of value you need to look after. This makes product thinking very difficult. Now let's summarize this, and I've got one last area to cover. Let's see if I can do this quickly. Look, we organize teams around our digital products. We decompose customer, supplier, employee experiences to find our enabling digital products. These are enabling products. The components that are used across many of those products, we identify those as product team enabling products. And we give product teams ownership and responsibility for their product's success. That's what it works. That's when we focus on the value of the product, not how fast teams are producing things. Now let's mention this. One of the things we do in mature product companies is we stop funding projects. We fund products. In working with the US company Target, right around 2017, they stopped funding projects. Or right now, 80% of their technology funding comes in way of product funding. That means they recognize there's an app, they fund that app, and what they do is every 6 months they review the product team's funding and say, should we increase their funding, decrease their funding, or continue their funding? And the way they do that is they look at metrics. Sarah Francis is a finance person at Target that I talked to, and Sarah said, this is so much easier than what we used to do. We used to have to look at these business case and calculate return on investment, and we knew the return on investment was voodoo, was fake anyway. We never went back and actually measured the return on investment, but now it's simple. Every 6 months, we just check the team's KPIs or their metrics and see if they're producing value. And then we make decisions on whether to increase or decrease their funding. So here's the last thing I want to talk about. Let's see how quick I can do this so we can have a lot of time for questions. I want to talk about measuring what matters, or measuring that value we just talked about. So I'll usually ask organizations what they measure in their organization. Let's pull my last picture here. What I see in most organizations when you ask what do you measure, they'll talk about things like ARR or MRR, or which is short for annual recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue. So they'll do things to focus on revenue. They'll focus on customer satisfaction, things like Net Promoter Score. They'll focus on having, let's say, the number of users we have, or their growth. And those are common metrics. But these are metrics you should recognize that come from the impact area. These are business metrics. But what we need to know, well, these things we'll often refer to as business metrics. And the important thing to understand about business metrics is that they are lagging indicators. They lag behind all these things that are outcomes or usage. Now, the primary thing you need to be aware of is who are your users, and what we need to do is measure whether they use your product. Or, look, I'm going to say what I said before. What's important is they keep using your product. If you build something for internal use, we want to make sure that employees keep using it. If we build something for our external customers, we want to make sure that they keep using it. So the first and only thing you need to worry about measuring is for every feature capability in your product, you do this for your whole product, and for every feature you release, do people use it? That's it. So the first thing you need to get good at is instrumenting your product, and what do they do, and measure whether people actually do it. Now, if you're measuring whether people actually do it, we can worry about, we can start to look at their frequency, how often they do it. And we can also worry about, well, how long it takes, or the time to do it. We can worry about things, then we can start to worry about things like efficiency and effectiveness, especially for things that we build internally. So when I'm working with a company and they're releasing a new feature, my first question to them is, how are you going to measure value? And they'll say things like ROI, or things like, well, that's a lagging indicator. The value first and foremost comes from people using it. How are you going to measure whether people are actually using it? And there are lots of tools these days that do this. I've got a slide at the tail of this deck that gives you a handful of tools to do this. But boy, I'm old. We used to do this just by logging to log files to indicate that people were using it, and then pull a lot of data out of a table to see how often it was used and how long it took, and things like that. Now, first thing is measure whether your users are using it. But the next thing we've got to measure is, well, their journey to continuing to use it. Remember, we talked about users that need to see it and try it, and then maybe use it for the first time, and then keep using it, and then ideally we want users to say good things. Now, I'm going to draw this as a mountain. And this mountain is your product, or the feature you just released for your product. And at the bottom of your product or feature mountain is a bunch of possible customers and users. And they have a decision to make. They're staring up at your feature and they're saying, should we try this thing? Does it look scary? Does it look steep? Does it look dangerous? Is it worth it? And some subset of these people will decide, yes, it's worth it. We want to go up this product mountain. And these are the people that see it and try it. Now, in product speak, this is called acquisition. And we look for acquisition metrics. How many people saw and tried our product? How many people saw the feature and clicked into it? Now, one of the things we want them to do is keep going up that mountain. We want them to use it for the first time. And we have to decide what using it for the first time means. This is what in product speak is called activation. I worked with a company, well now 2 years ago, since we just rolled into 2025. I worked with a company a couple years ago that made a continuous integration and development environment for iOS applications. If you're building iOS applications or applications that work on iPhones, you need to integrate and build on Apple equipment. So they maintain big server farms, and they did this. They helped you do this. Now, a lot of customers saw their product and tried to use, signed up for it. But then they would start to try and use it. They would learn how to get a build script to build, and then they would upload their own build scripts, and then they would really struggle getting their own build scripts to run on it. They had to decide how much using is really learning how to use it. And they decided that getting their own build scripts to run 3 times successfully, that meant they tried to use it. That's it. But what they were seeing was along the way, lots of people would, let's call this, roll back. They would struggle to do this, and this is where they had a very big problem with their product. They had features and capabilities that people want, but they didn't have a lot of people using them because they struggled to use them the first time. So every time you release a new feature capability, you need to pay attention to this journey. How many people will see it, try it, how many people use it the first time, and how many people keep using it, because this is where we want to get them. We want to get them up here to this keep using it place, or what we call retention. But our best users are the ones that get all the way to the top of the mountain, and they cheer about it, and they write good reviews, and they tell other people this is such a great product. These are the people that say good things, write good reviews. This is the stuff that we call referral. And all of these things contribute to, well, revenue. Sometimes acquisition contributes to revenue. Sometimes acquisition, especially converting from a free to a pay thing, converts to revenue. Continuing to use your product contributes to revenue. And telling other people about the product helps us get more people to come up this mountain. Now, this is product speak. I like saying, see it, try it, use it, keep using it, and say good things, because that's what regular humans say. But if you were a product person, you know the way you measure value is by finding metrics for acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue. And I've added a rollback here. For people that know, anybody heard of this metrics funnel before? Yeah, good, you know what it is then. This is from a guy named Dave McClure. This is referred to as pirate metrics. Now, I've talked about this without saying pirates, but I have had to say what pirates say. It's acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue, and I've added rollback. So apparently this is, it helps you remember, because this is what pirates say, is arr. Now, this is where value comes from. This is how we go deeper into what's going on out here. What I'd like our organizations to stop saying they're focusing on value and actually measure the value they're creating. Actually pay attention to whether they're getting the value from everything they release. And one of the things that Jim talked about yesterday was a hypothesis statement. Actually build hypotheses for what people will do when things come out, and actually observe whether they did it. Let me summarize this and summarize everything here for a minute. If you read only one article on metrics, find this. It's very old. It's from a book called Lean Analytics. If you look up the term, the one metric that matters, it talks about a concept in Lean Analytics. And with a title like the one metric that matters, it sounds like they're going to tell you, here's the most important metric to focus on. But that's not what it says. What it says is there are way too many metrics to focus on. So you are going to need to focus on the metrics that matter most based upon where your product is right now. If you're releasing a new feature, you probably want to immediately start measuring how many people try the feature, not how many people are using it every day, because we need people to try it before they use it. And once we're confident people are trying it and starting to use it, then we'll start to maybe worry about retention. We change the metrics we focus on based upon where our product is in its life cycle. Now, we used to have a word for metrics that mattered. We used to call those metrics key performance indicators. But these days, when I go into an organization, everybody refers to their metrics as KPIs. Some of you have probably heard the expression that if everything is high priority, nothing is high priority. If everything is a key performance indicator, nothing is a key performance indicator. So maybe the term KPI doesn't work. These days, we start to use concepts like OKRs, or objectives and key results, to come up with our key performance indicators. The 2 or 3 metrics that support your OKR, those become key. Whatever you do, focus. That's what's important here. Now, for every feature or capability you add to your product, identify and instrument the metrics that show that your product is being adopted. At minimum, plan on observing people and watching what they do with that product. Look for efficiency and effectiveness metrics. Not just do they use it, but are they getting more work done faster? Do they make fewer mistakes? Correlate product usage with business impact. This is one of the most annoying things, is it's almost impossible to figure out the return on investment from any one feature or capability. If you add a new feature to the product, if let's say you're building something for internal use and you add something new to the product, and you might see that people using the product, your employees, are more efficient. They get more work done faster. And you can say, look, we've saved a whole bunch of employee time. But the dirty secret here is your company does not save money unless it fires people. You're still paying their salaries, and so there may not actually be return on investment. So we have to figure out how it's helping. Now, if you improve a feature in an existing product and we start to sell more of that product, is it because of that new feature we added? It's going to be very hard to figure that out. Usually what we can say is that people are using the feature and we think it's having an impact on return on investment. If no one uses your feature, it's likely not having an impact. That's the general rule of thumb here. Don't try and calculate return on investment for everything you're building. It just doesn't work that way. All right, here's the punchline here. Focus on value. Value isn't abstract. It isn't what stakeholders say it is. It isn't stakeholder happiness. It's the value that people get using your products. Understand what your digital products are. Organize teams around those digital products and really measure value. It's not an abstract thing. It's not a guess. It's not subjective. It is measurable, and you can understand it. There are a few more slides in here. That's a handful of, those are a handful of tools that people commonly use for product metrics. Let's call it here. There's a few other slides with some links here, and however this conference shares slides, I'll get those on there. What is some stuff on my website, and look, there's that book with the bird of death on it. So let me supplement this. It's not just focusing on value, it's actually measuring on value, or where is he? He'll get you and kill you. So that's the last point I want to make. All right, thank you very much. That's it. Now, we're supposed to be done at 11:30, is that right? And now I have time for questions. Where's the microphone that's normally up there? Or I can just keep talking about other stuff too. But,
では、ご質問がありましたら、こちらのマイクにまで来てください。If you have any question, please come here to ask him. Or in あと他のルームの方とか、オンラインの方は、直接話していただいても大丈夫ですので、特に隣のホールの方、中にマイクあると思って話していただければこっち伝わるんじゃないかと思うので、もしかしてお近くの なんだろうな、実行委員、スタッフの方、インカムでやるんじゃなくて、ズームで発話するようにしてもらうようなにお願いします。はい。昨日なんかちょっと取れなかったみたいなので、はい。じゃあご質問、どうぞ、グレゴさん、どうぞどうぞ。
Thank you for your talk. I'd like to hear from you about how you approach industries or specific products where not only is there a long lag between the activities the teams do or the features they release and the outcome, let alone the impact, and also situations where establishing causality between what was done and what the impact that was achieved is really difficult. I know that everything you've talked about applies, and each product and company is going to have to figure out how to deal with this mess, yeah, and do what's best with all the constraints they have. But do you look at such companies and products in specific ways? Would you advise them differently? Or do you just have some stories you can share that would be helpful?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Let's talk about it. The long lag is many companies, if your company uses a process like SAFE and you have a release train approach, you're laughing. Why are you laughing? It's SAFE. If you use a release train approach, teams may finish features or capabilities, but there's no outcome until things come out. So the company I used to work for in the 1990s and into the 2000s was acquired by Salesforce and is now Salesforce Commerce Cloud. And Salesforce releases that product once every 4 months. So there's a long lag. They're not able to see if people see, try, use, and keep using that product for at least 4 months. I've worked with teams at Atlassian, and for teams working on the cloud-based version of Jira, they've learned they can release things immediately, but it usually takes 1 to 2 months to see if people are using it. It takes 2 to 3 sprints to see if people are using it. You can measure in a few weeks if somebody tries it, but for a new feature to see if people are really using it takes a few months. It's always going to be a long lag. A couple things I'll recommend. On my website and in a couple different books, one of the things I'll ask teams to do is create a 2x2 for everything they release. The bottom axis we'll call actual effort. And when they release a feature, I'll ask them to organize the actual effort from small to large, from things that took days to weeks to months to quarters to release. And then we'll use the vertical axis for actual outcome. Oh, am I not sharing? Oh, I still have this. Sorry. Yeah, that's me. For actual outcome. And what I'll ask teams to do is every time they finish releasing a feature, do a quick reflection on that whole feature and ask how long did it actually take to do, what's the quality of it, and then let's wait. And every 2 weeks at the end of every sprint, let's talk about the actual outcome. And the problem is there's no way to get around that lag. It's reality. Value comes from people using it, but we don't lose sight of those features. Above this, at the bottom of this, is the I don't know category, but we rate things from awesome to awful. And as we start to get data, we start to move things up from awesome to awful. There's no way of I want to keep it visible, I want to keep value visible, and we want to keep the act of measuring value visible. So every time you finish a feature, put it on this 2x2. Let's see if I can do this. Let's open that link. Am I not connected to the... I'm not connected to the web. Darn it. Okay. If you just Google actual output and actual effort and Jeff Patton, you'll find that. So pay attention to it. The other thing that I pay attention to when I'm working with large organizations, we look at risk. And one of the things I'll talk about is the difference between a release to earn versus a release to learn. A release to learn is something we release very early to a small audience of partner customers. In large organizations that I work with, they choose what are called customer development partners. If they have build a product for thousands of companies, they may choose 5 companies or 8 companies, release it to those 5 or 8 companies, and observe what's happening there. What's interesting about outcomes is I can measure the outcomes for a few dozen or a few hundred users and see if they're using it, and then iterate it until it's great, and then release it to everyone. In big companies that I work with, they're able to get things out very quickly to partner customers, but then when they're confident that things are working, scale it out to all their customers. We'll talk about this as a nail it before you scale it approach, and people have probably heard this. So we nail it with that small audience or small group of partners. Any consumer electronics company or consumer software company like Spotify or Jira always releases to a very small subset of users very quickly and iterates until it's awesome and then rolls it back. The long lag often is a consequence of scale. And when we're releasing to a lot of customers, we have to worry about performance and then go-to-market concerns or operational support. But when we're releasing to learn, I don't worry about performance. It's only going to a small number of people. I don't worry about localizing it to other languages. I don't worry. In fact, I can even pull some features out of it because of my early adopters. Customers are more forgiving. You talked about causal effect, and I maybe should have asked you a little bit more about that, but sometimes the causal effect is looking at, well, what I see people talk about most is this relationship between outcome and impact, or oftentimes we can measure whether someone uses our feature, but we cannot directly correlate it with return on investment or reductions in cost or increases in revenue. All we can do is expose that causal effect. And we don't say we increased return on investment by this much or we got this return on investment. We say people are using it and that drives reductions in costs. We don't know by how much, but it drives it. Or I remember working with an organization that always insisted that every feature had to show a dollar impact on lifetime customer value. But when pressed, I asked him, how do you calculate that? And he says, well, we're just guessing. You can guess, but it is always just a guess. That's it. But you should be able to show how it is impacting things. I'm not sure if that's what you meant by the causal effect. I should have asked. I'm sorry about that. Was it? Okay, good. You got a thumb up. But the reality is, I don't know. Over and over, I talk to people inside of organizations that will say, what's the return on investment for that? Or we need to understand the return on investment. And the only thing I can say to them is, obviously you don't understand how this works. This is not, you can't do that. I love the way Jim started his talk yesterday by saying there is no way to calculate efficiency for engineers, and I'm going to tell you there is no way to calculate return on investment accurately for any one feature or capability. That's it. You can do it at a whole product level, but not for a capability. Sorry, very long answer. Any other?
Now the question that they're preparing the other room. じゃあテラスルームの方から質問、通訳付きで日本語で質問ということなのでお願いいたします。
はい、テラスルームです。聞こえますか？
This is speaking from the terrace room.
聞こえてます。OK です。
はい、テラスルームにずっといた小田中です。はい、お話ありがとうございました。私がお聞きしたいのが途中での海賊指標の話があったかと思うんですが、リファラルはインパクトを強めていくにあたって非常に重要なものだと思っています。ただそのリファラルを強めていくときに顧客とユーザーが離れている場合、ここにギャップがある場合というのは、例えばそのユーザーがいいなと思ってリファラルしたいと思ってもなかなかビジネスとしてリファラルとしてつながるのが難しいのかなというのが肌感覚であるのですが、このギャップを埋めていったりですとか、その顧客とユーザーが離れているときのリファラルに関して何か良いアプローチですとかありましたらぜひお聞かせいただければと思います。
Lecture. I am Odanaka and I'm speaking from the referral room. And you mentioned mentioned the pirate metric, and I think referral is very important in order to strengthen the impact. However, in the case where there's a distance between the user and the customer, who can choose, even if the users like the product, if there's a gap or distance between the user and the customer, I think it'll be very difficult to really have business impact here. So how can you fill the gap between the user and the customer?
Let's see if I can say anything sensible about this. So for everybody, I hope you understand the question he's asking. One other thing that's going on with this metrics mountain is that there's a flow here where there's a continuum. The things on the lower side of the mountain, these things are leading indicators, and the higher you get in the mountain, these things are lagging indicators. This is, by the way, a metrics funnel. I should have drawn this. There are stages for acquisition, activation, retention, and referral. And it's best to measure referral by talking to people that are using your application. Has anyone ever bought an application and on your iPhone, let's say, and 5 minutes after downloading it, the application will ask you to write a review or provide a referral? And it's very insulting because I haven't even figured out how to use it yet. How can I possibly say good things about something? And I didn't get his name, the person who just talked about this was also talking about the difference between customers and users. Customers, the people who buy it, they're going to say good things about the application if it's helping meet their value proposition, and that value proposition is only realized after we use it. So users may love it, but let's say, I can't use Jira as an example. Most users don't love Jira, but companies love it well enough because it's cost effective and it's better than their alternatives. So Jira may be something where companies may give it good customer satisfaction, or the choosers may give it good satisfaction, but the users of Jira may give it bad satisfaction, or may say they don't like it. One of the ways we short circuit this a little bit is by turning our customers into users. I used to build software the company I built software for is now called Salesforce Commerce Cloud. But one of the products we built was for point of sale, or for cashiers ringing up things in stores. I didn't need to worry about whether cashiers used the software. They had to, or they'd be fired. But we did have metrics for efficiency and effectiveness. We measured how fast they ring up transactions and what the average transaction size was. And we put those things onto dashboards to say the average time it takes to ring up a transaction is this, and your employees are getting faster at ringing up transactions, and your employees are ringing up transactions with more items, or the average value of a transaction is going up higher. We exposed those value metrics in the form of dashboards to the choosers, and frequently asked the choosers, we exposed the value proposition to them, we turned our choosers into users, if that makes sense. And what choosers want to see is something that takes that value proposition and makes it visible. Spotify does that at the end of every year. At the end of every year, they tell you what kind of music you listen to and then summarize. They're kind of summarizing the value you got out of Spotify for the year, because you're both the user and the chooser. But a way to help the referral from the choosers is to expose the value and turn them into users, expose the value some way. I can't do anything about the length of this cycle. It takes a long time. This is why value is so annoying. And this is why one of my biggest frustrations with Scrum and Agile development is that processes like Scrum pretend we can recognize if we're getting value every 2 weeks, when I know that doesn't work that way. So not a very good answer, but The short answer is if users are separate from choosers, try and turn the choosers into users and expose the value proposition. Any other questions? Good. There's one person back there, and there's...
はい、同じ T シャツを着ていますが、違う
ちょっと待ってください。テラスルーム続けてください。
あ、聞こえますか？
Uh,
テラスルーム聞こえますか？
音が聞こえてません。
聞こえてない。
OK、はい、I can hear you。
OK？ はい、同じ T シャツを着ているが、違う人です。笹尾と申します。よろしくお願いします。KPI というか、メトリックスを測って、その時その時、重要な指標を決めて観測していくっていうお話があったと思うんですけども、例えば、昨今、日本でもコンパウンドスタートアップというような、いくつかのプロダクトを、立ち上げて、それを成長戦略として見据えて、企業として事業を成長させようという活動があるんですけども、そういう活動をしていると、いくつかのプロダクトの中のいくつかの機能が最初のうちは使われていたんですけど、だんだん利用比率が下がっていって、でも利用者はずっといる。気づくと数%の利用者がいろんな機能を使っているっていう状態になるんですけども、そういうのを観測しながら、より何ですかね、使われる状態、価値が高い状態にするには、どのように測って、どのように進めていくのがよろしいのでしょうか。
I'm actually wearing the same T-shirt that the previous person, but I'm a different person, and I'm to you. And then I understand that we should be observing based on the KPI at that point, or using metrics to see the benefit of what we have produced. And give you one example, and I have a question related to this. Recently here in Japan, there is a type of the startups called compound startups, means they're producing multiple products to grow the company, and those multiple products have multiple features. At the beginning of those features are released, people are using those features for the initial period, but as time goes by, frequency of using the same feature goes down, but we still do have users using that the product, even if it's a single-digit percent, few percent. So the various features are being used in less frequent manner. And how should we observe that to have a high value out of these features of product? Is there any way to do so?
all right. There was a name for these types of companies that produce... Compound startup. Okay. I don't know if I have anything good to say. There is one of the things we look at with, let me draw a picture quickly here. With every product and with every feature of the product, we look at its growth over time. We'll often see a product growth curve that looks like this. Let's see if I can draw this. We often split that growth curve up into 4 parts. Those parts with software products, we call this explore, exploit, sustain, and retire. When we have to recognize this with our product, but you need to recognize this with every new feature you add to your product. When you release a new feature, you will see lots of people that see and try the feature. The people that see and try the feature are what we call early adopters. Early adopters will try new things without experience, will try new things before it's proven useful, and they may see and try them. And often when we release a new feature, we release it and we want to see evidence that early adopters are using it. And then we decide to move it to exploit mode when we have evidence that early adopters are using it. And then we try to adapt that feature for more conservative users. Conservative users that need to hear about the feature capability, that need evidence that it works, things like that. And then when the feature becomes part of daily use for lots of users, we move it to sustain mode. And in sustain mode, we want people to keep using it. Now, we have to pay attention to a feature at any given time. But what happens a lot of times, the reason this curve is drawn with this gap is there is a hole here. Oftentimes, early adopters will start using a feature, but it will fail to cross over. There's a person named Jeffrey Moore who wrote a book called Crossing the Chasm, and what he's talking about is this movement from explore to exploit, or from early adopters to the majority. One of the things that happens is early adopters will find new things and try and use them, but they won't get the usefulness out of them, and the majority doesn't quite, it never quite makes it over. So we have to pay attention over time. Pay attention to which users are using it. Pay attention to that, and you will be left with a problem. You'll be left with a situation where lots of early adopters are still using it, but the majority aren't using it. And you have to decide whether to keep the feature for that very small subset of people or remove the feature. There is a company close by where I live. I'm in the United States. I live in a state called Utah, and one of the companies that's local is a company called Pluralsight. Has anybody heard of Pluralsight before? They do online training. If you were to take a developer taking an AngularJS training, you would go there. And a friend of mine took over product development, and one of the first things he did was instrument the features in Pluralsight, and found that a lot of features were not being used very much. And one of the things he said is, well, we're going to eliminate all those features that don't get used very much. And everybody in the company, their heads blew up, and they said, this is terrible. We have all these people. It's going to really hurt us. And he said, no, you just hired me. You have to trust me. And they pulled a lot of features out of the product, and they released it, and they were ready to roll back right away when people complained. But I think you can guess what happened. When they released the new product with lots of features pulled out, everybody said, wow, this is great. It's so much easier to use than it used to be. And the outcome was great. Yes, of course, a few people complained. That always happens. But the hardest part about software development, the hardest part about product development, goes back to this model. The hardest choices you make are not what features go into your product. It's what customers and users you choose to focus on. What customers' problems you're going to focus on, and what customers' problems you're going to ignore. So the hardest decision to make is to say, we're going to ignore those early adopters, the ones that tried those features, and then a lot of people fell into that chasm, fell into that gap, and pull that feature out. The right thing to do is to pull the feature out. I hope I didn't lose the plot on that question. I hope that makes sense. But my friend that's in charge of features was in charge of things at Pluralsight. One of the things they would do is every time they released a new feature, they would watch the metrics on other features. And one of the things they saw is oftentimes releasing a new feature causes other features used to drop or go down. Sort of like opening a new street in a city. Everybody starts driving on the new street and stops driving on the old one. And they found oftentimes that releasing new features caused them to have to remove old features. And that'll happen too. Did I answer that question? Do we have time for one more? I know it's 1:30 hour, and there was somebody back there that was waiting patiently. And I take too long to answer questions.
Let's make this is last question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you stay here or? じゃあ、ジェフ・パットンさん、この後も会場にいらっしゃいますので、個別にご質問あれば多分受けていただけると思います。セスさんが、手伝っていただけると思いますので、ご質問はどうぞ。それから、if you have any question, please catch the Jeff Patton around here. Yeah. あとですね、いくつかアナウンス、 あと、ジェフさん、could you make this sign autograph to the book owner?
Yes, yes, of course.
Around here, yeah. じゃあ、本をお持ちの方はこの辺でサインもしてくれると思います。会期中捕まえていただいてもいいと思いますので、ぜひやってください。Okay, thank you for the great session. Let's finish the keynote session.
Okay.
ジェフさん、ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。